powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, this is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It is brought to you by the Gallery Bar, Book, and Games at Ocean Casino Resort. Go to the Gallery, go to Ocean, go for the win. For more info, visit oceanac.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Geoff Mosher is here. The Eagles are back Saturday night right here on 97.3 ESPN. They take on the Baltimore Ravens. We'll, of course, take a closer look at that matchup and what we could learn later on in the week. But last night, the Eagles were back at Lincoln Financial Field, Jeff, in front of 50,000 people. And there's a lot to discuss after the weekend that was. How was your weekend, my friend?
It was a good weekend, Mike. I did a lot of fun things, and, I'm excited for this week ahead, though. A lot of good football.
Yeah, well, it's your last couple of weekends to get it all out because the work to be done is covering the Birds, and everybody needs it. So let's start with the big news over the weekend, which was Zach Cunningham in along with Myles Jack. So what does that mean for the linebacker position? How do you read bringing in those two veteran players? Is this big news? Or is this just, similar to last year, just a couple veteran depth guys, a little competition?
No, I mean, these are some significant additions, Mike. They're guys with a lot of experience. I know they were out on the street, but we've been talking on Inside the Birds pod lately for weeks now, and even with you, that linebacker was not a position that the Eagles were going to be impatient on. It's not a position that they were going to treat like nose tackle last year and wait until they suffered a loss before they made some moves there. Linebacker was a position that they were so thin at just going into camp. We were talking about your number 4 linebacker maybe being someone like Ben Van Sumeren, right, who is a rookie, undrafted rookie, or someone like Sean, the Temple kid, Sean Bradley.
Yep.
Yeah, which is just not good enough. I mean, and Nicobe Dean, as good as he can be and is, this is really just his first year as a starter. So you look at who they signed, Zach Cunningham, Myles Jack from the defensive side. And the first thing that jumps out at you is they both have a lot of experience. The other thing that jumps out to you is they're on the street for a reason. You know, they both have dealt with injuries. Zach Cunningham with the elbow. Myles Jack, there's some questions about his knees and how his ability to hold up. But, Mike, I think the Zach Cunningham signing jumps out at me. This is a guy who was a really good linebacker, a tackling machine, had some elbow problems last year, not like your standard NFL injury, but it certainly prevented him from playing a lot of games last year for the Titans. And I'm sure that after signing that contract that he did, it was frustrating for them. I think he was on a second contract with the Titans. But either way, if he's healthy, Mike, he's a pretty good linebacker. He's 6'3", which makes him one of the tallest linebackers the Eagles have had in quite a while. He's got really good arm length, good wingspan, good athletic range. As it was told to me, his length and his range are going to be assets to this defense. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if Zach Cunningham was the guy who was going to get the job opposite Nicobe Dean when they're in a 2-linebacker package. Myles Jack, I think, has a little bit of an uphill battle there. They're not disappointed with Christian Ellis. He has played well this camp, I've been told. So that's a positive development. Nick Morrow's been okay, I've been told. So those guys are certainly still in the mix. But when this dust settles, as long as he's healthy, I would think Zach Cunningham is a guy that we're gonna be talking about next to Nicobe Dean on first and second down for the Eagles.
Yeah, I was going to say some of the text messages we got, man, were sent here saying, what does this mean for Dean? Sirianni essentially, addressed that a little bit last night, but do you see any reason why, if healthy, Nicobe Dean is not one of the guys, and that the two guys they signed are kind of battling each other to be the other, and I guess Nick Morrow?
Yeah, no, I still think Nicobe Dean is your linebacker, your top off the ball inside linebacker. That's why they drafted him. That's why they're giving him this opportunity. But again, Mike, he's got to prove that he's that guy. And I think that they've been happy with the results thus far in 6 or 7 camp practices, and really not for him because he didn't participate in the last one at NovaCare and then the open practice. So even fewer for him. But this is year 2 for him. He knows the defense. It's generally similar concepts, and they're just going to let him grow into that role that he should grow into. But, it can't be great that he's out right now. He did drop to the third round because of concern about his body and wear and tear and playing at Georgia and what he's already been through. We heard that with Alabama guys too under Nick Saban, that they go into the NFL and it's like they're half beat up right already. So there's probably some concern there, but he should be their most talented overall linebacker. But to your point, I do think that one thing what we should look for the Eagles this year is to be in their sub packages a lot more. And we've seen some 3 safety formations already a lot in camp. And it wouldn't surprise me if the predominant defense that the Eagles play this year outside of first down, right, or outside of stopping the run, is a 4-1-6 type of look. Those 6 being 3 corners, 3 safeties.
Yeah, which is kind of, let's dig into that a little bit, because the follow-up questions are ahead. Hey, they brought in a couple veteran linebackers to get more competition there. What about the safety spot? Can they find 2? Now we're talking about bringing in 3 safeties, not bringing in from the outside. I'm just saying bringing 3 safeties onto the field here.
Yeah, well, that's sort of the conundrum that Sean Desai has to figure out. Is he better off with 2 linebackers on the field or an extra defensive back? And it's fair to point out that, you're basically asking, am I better off with, Zach Cunningham on the field more, or am I better off with, Kevon Wallace or Reed Blankenship or Sidney Brown on the field more? They drafted Sidney Brown with a 3rd round pick. I don't believe he'll be ready. I'm not ruling it out. I'm just the nature of the position and being a rookie. This is a tough defense to acclimate to when you're a rookie. But I would be a little bit surprised if Sidney Brown started the year as a starting safety. But I do think that there'll be opportunities to utilize his skill set to get him on the field as a 3rd safety in sub packages while he learns the entire defense. And so that would, to me, signal, a willingness or a want to get Blankenship and Sidney Brown on the field along with Edmonds, or get Wallace on the field, who seems to be having a decent camp, as opposed to putting more linebackers on the field.
Right now, where are the safety spot? I mean, Reed Blankenship seems to be one of the definitive guys. What else is happening with the rest of those guys? Terrell Edmonds, Evans they brought in. Obviously, you mentioned Kevon Wallace and Sidney Brown, the rookies. But do we have any separation yet?
Yeah, no, it's kind of been difficult. Again, it's always difficult when you're really only talking about, a half dozen actual practices, and they're only about, 2 or 3 team periods, and the pads just came out, a week ago. So there's a lot to sort out. I think we'll find out a lot more in the joint practices and the preseason games. But what you're seeing is Kevon Wallace getting an opportunity. I can't say he's done poorly. I can't say he's done great. He's getting an opportunity in his 4th year. Knows the defense. They brought in Terrell Edmonds for a reason. Blankenship, you saw that he had a nice year last year, becoming the first undrafted rookie in team history to start a playoff game. So those 3 are getting the most opportunities. And there have been times where I've seen Kevon Wallace and Reed Blankenship as your starting safeties in a 2-safety defense without Terrell Edmonds. So I don't know what to make of that. I haven't been told that Terrell Edmonds hasn't been doing well. I just think that in year 4, to me, it's like put up or shut up time for Kevon Wallace, right? Like either you're going to do something on this team or you're just not going to be here, because they got a lot of guys now who can play special teams. They don't need Kevon Wallace to be there just for special teams. He's not like he's some amazing special teams player.
Yeah.
So I think they're giving him every opportunity to show that he belongs on this 53 because he can impact the defense.
You mentioned there's not enough practices yet to kind of have separation at safety. Then why does it seem that the right guard spot is settled? What have they seen enough of to say it? Now, I know Sirianni hasn't come out and said that Cam Jurgens is our right guard, but actions speak louder than words, and the actions are that was never even a competition.
Yeah, this one's a little different because of the Jeff Stoutland factor. Jeff Stoutland is one of the few position coaches in the NFL who I think has a lot of clout when it comes to personnel say. And he likes what he's seen out of Cam Jurgens way back from just last year and OTAs. And he was starting to make a comparison in his press conference the other day between Cam Jurgens and Brandon Brooks, even though Brandon Brooks was a little bit bigger. By the time when he got to the Eagles, Brandon Brooks was a big dude. He transformed his body, but I think he was in the 330 range when he came to the Eagles, if I'm not mistaken. But he was just basically trying to say that Cam Jurgens has really good strength, asks a lot of questions, has the knowledge. Tyler Steen is a rookie who's trying to adapt from tackle to guard. And there's a lot of stuff going on inside your head, and that can slow you down. I don't think it's a close competition by any stretch of the means, but it sure is trending that for week one, Cam Jurgens is going to start at right guard. But that also invites probably a situation that the Eagles didn't envision going into the year, and that's, well, what happens if Jason Kelce gets hurt? Because we know that the Eagles do not like to take a starting lineman and move that guy to a different spot and then put in another lineman, because that makes two changes instead of one. So you look at that Josh Andrews signing that they had over the weekend. This is a guy who came up with the Eagles 6 or 7 years ago during the Chip Kelly era. Went on. He's played for a couple of different teams. He was with New Orleans last year. He's played in, I think, 48 games. He's a guard who has played center. So I don't look at that as a camp body signing. I look at that as right now their backup center in camp has been Brett Toth, who's really a guard tackle, and I saw him snap 2 balls over the quarterback's head in practice the other day, and that was just one practice I was at. So to me, this is another clue that their trajectory is that Cam Jurgens will start at right guard, and they're going to find somebody reliable to be their backup center.
Yeah, it's funny because before camp started, I kind of thought that Steen would be the favorite to win that job based on what you just said, knowing Stoutland doesn't like to move the pieces. Steen was drafted in the 3rd round essentially to be that spot because they know Jurgens eventually will move to center. I'm a little surprised that this seems like it has not been a competition at all. And that's one of the things, Moshe, I was wondering, what has Jurgens done? I don't know that you got a chance to see or have heard. Has he just completely outperformed everybody, or did they go in with he's going to be our right guard?
I would surmise that the mental part of the game is very important when you're moving from tackle to guard. You're a much more confined space. Your landmarks are completely different. The caliber of athlete that you're going up against is much bigger. You're much closer to the ball, and that is a very difficult transition for some people, especially some who've never played it before. I think Driscoll had played tackle and guard in college. Don't quote me on that, but for whatever reason, he was able to acclimate and play both pretty early. Tyler Steen was a guy who's played only tackle, and he is a convert from defensive end. So he really doesn't have any interior offensive line experience other than the Senior Bowl, which is really not real experience. So he played at the Senior Bowl, and the Eagles felt that he had the size to do it because his arms were a little short for outside. But there's a whole lot of schooling that you need to learn. And I would imagine for Tyler Steen right now, he's not playing as fast as he can and as instinctively as he can because there's a lot going on inside his head. Whereas Cam Jurgens had all of last year to kind of get with the program and learn what it's like to be a guard instead of a center, and practice while Jason, he had a redshirt year. Jason Kelce played in pretty much every game. Jurgens only played a few offensive snaps.
Moshe, we talked a lot about them bringing in new linebackers, but what did we see from a guy that I don't know what to make of right now, and that's Nolan Smith so far? I mean, where do they play him? How do they get him on the field? What's his role? It seems that he is standing out at all these practices and getting an opportunity whenever he's been given an opportunity.
Yeah, so he's the perfect player to stand out in training camp, and I'm not taking anything away from him, but he is, because when you have that much speed and quickness, you're especially going to look good before the pads come out, right? Because guys can't really get their hands on you. And then secondly, the way he practiced, really tough practice player, fast, goes, balls to the wall every single play. That always jumps out. And so he deserves all the accolades because, it's hard to find people who practice with that intensity and who have that kind of speed. So that'll jump out. I think we'll get a really good look at him and what he's capable of doing in the joint practices and the preseason games, because then it'll be for real and we'll see how the opponents adjust. But he is playing on the edge. He's getting opportunities. Hassan Reddick, remember he started on PUP. He's dealing with the groin. So Nolan Smith was getting some more opportunities on the first team than most guys get as a rookie. And then also when Nicobe Dean went down and they were thin there at linebacker, they played him a little bit at off-the-ball linebacker just to see what he can do from that spot and also to probably fill a hole. So I think it makes a lot of sense to cross-train, see where he can help you. If you can line him up as an off-ball linebacker, I would say in certain formations, right, where maybe you can blitz him from that spot or have him cover if it's, first and 20, right, your team's backed up, you might be able to get something there.
All right, Geoff Mosher from InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast. I guess the last thing that, is kind of still materializing here is, I guess there's a couple things, but the running back position. I don't know that we have found anything out there. Are we separating? Do we have something? Gainwell, Swift, Penny, Boston Scott, Sermon. How do you kind of take a look at where those guys all are now after the first full week of everything?
Well, DeAndre Swift has come as advertised. I mean, he's really shown the Eagles this camp so far what he can do for this team in the passing game. As far as, if you're not a lead back, but you're sort of a 1A, but you're out there to catch the ball on routes and dump offs and things like that, and then make yards after the catch. He's shown that. He's got a nice little explosion to his game. I think everybody knew that about DeAndre Swift, and I anticipate him being a big help to the offense in that regard. Everybody else is sort of like what Rashad Penny. I think we'll get a better idea again when you're playing against other teams. He's looked good. He stayed healthy. That's important. He does look dynamic when he has the ball in his hand. But camp tends to be a passing camp more than a running camp. We all know that. So we'll get a better idea during the preseason and the joint practices. I would say Kenneth Gainwell is an interesting one to keep an eye on. He got the first carry in 11-on-11s of open practice. I don't think that means anything, though. But you do kind of wonder what kind of role he'll be able to have if Swift and Penny are both on the team doing their thing. It might be a more generalized role like third down back or 2-minute drill back. We'll see. And I would say Trey Sermon's still baffling because the coaches just glow about him. I mean, they love him, and it's not dishonest. There's no reason to be overly glowing about Trey Sermon, right? I mean, you don't hear them talking about the fifth linebacker, the fifth safety, the same way they talk about the fifth running back. So for whatever reason, and this goes back to last year when we were reporting that the coaches were really, really happy with Trey Sermon, even though he's not getting on the field, nothing has changed. They like him, and I'm going to be fascinated to see how this thing shakes out.
Me too.
Someone's going to have to go if he's going to stay, and I don't know who that's going to be.
Yeah, that one's a fascinating one to me is how they keep all these guys rolling, how they keep them all happy, how they keep them all around. I mean, realistically, do you need 4 running backs on the roster, right? I mean, do you need 4 guys?
Yeah, I mean, you don't need 5. You certainly don't need 5.
No, I mean, but you can make an argument, too. Like, last year you had Sanders, Gainwell, Scott. You had those 3 guys, and there wasn't any room for Sermon last year.
Right.
So
and Scott was tough enough to try to figure out when to get him into the game.
Exactly. So I mean, if you have Rashad now, do you think Penny, if he's healthy, is he a lock to make this roster if healthy?
I think so, Mike, but I'm having trouble reconciling, if they really love Trey Sermon, how they can have Trey Sermon and Rashad Penny on the team. How many bruising
is this your classic? Is this your classic? We're talking a guy up, hoping we get a phone call.
I have thought about that, but they've been talking him up for since the last year. And running back is not a position that I think that you're really looking to shake something up on the trade market. There's just so many. It's a fungible spot. Like, do they think they're going to get a 3rd-round pick for Trey Sermon? No, they're not going to get a 3rd-round pick. So I don't think so, Mike. I think they really do like him, and maybe it's their way of keeping him invested, knowing that there's 4 other guys that he's competing against, and maybe it doesn't look good for him right now.
Okay, a couple quick hits with Geoff Mosher from InsideTheBirds.com. Who is winning the 3rd wide receiver spot?
I mean, right now it's Quez Watkins. He's obviously, he came into camp like a man on a mission, very determined. He's had a good camp. Again, it's just camp until you do it in the regular season. I honestly, I've heard nothing bad about Olamide Zaccheaus. Nobody said he's not performing to standard, but in the practices that I've been to, that Adam Kaplan's been to, that Andrew Checker's been to, it just doesn't seem like he's made a play or anything. It maybe the ball just isn't going his way for whatever reason, but there just hasn't been much to report on that.
Who's the number 2 tight end right now?
Oh, Jack Stoll. I mean, that's the question is who's the number 3 tight end?
All right, who's the number 3 tight end right now?
Yeah, that's I don't think they have an answer there. I think that each one of them brings something a little different, right? Grant Calcaterra is an F tight end. He's only a pass-catching tight end. Tyree Jackson is a guy who is just freakishly athletic and tall, 6'7", and presents a whole different dimension. Can be a great red zone weapon, but he's got to stay healthy. He can block a little bit too, which surprised people. You got Dan Arnold, who's also really just an F tight end, but probably even more of a vertical threat than Calcaterra can be. So you've got some options here. You just got to let it play out and see which ones have the best camp.
Behind Slay and Bradbury and Maddox, who stands out?
Josh Jobe. And he stood out last year. He made the team as an undrafted free agent. He's got good positional versatility. If you're going to play a lot of dime and you want extra defensive backs on the field, Josh Jobe would give you a nice athlete who's got good size and has been working hard and contributes on special teams. And every time he's out there, he's around the ball. So I think that Josh Jobe really would. You asked me who the 4th corner is, or
if somebody got hurt, if Bradbury or Slay were hurt for an extended 3, 4, 5 weeks, who would play that outside spot?
Yeah, I would say Josh Jobe now, but don't count out Greedy Williams. I mean, he has some pretty. I was told. Now again, things change, right? They've only practiced a few times, so I was told he's been a positive. I think that was after 3 or 4 practices. I haven't rechecked on the last 2 or 3. It could have been totally different, but definitely Jobe and Williams are guys who are competing there.
All right, Geoff Mosher, the Inside the Birds podcast, Sunday night, 50,000 people in attendance. 43,000 went to the Phillies game on Sunday, so you had 93,000 people, and I'm sure a couple more that were overserved outside hanging around those parking lots Sunday. It must have been a wild day up there as the Eagles returned yesterday, and now they're getting ready for Saturday night against the Baltimore Ravens. We'll get Moshe's thoughts on what battles might be won or up for grabs Saturday night when he returns to Football at 4 on Wednesday. By the way, Football at 4 tomorrow will be Football at 5 because of Adam's travel schedule, so he will be joining us tomorrow in the 5 o'clock hour here on the Sports Bash. Moshe, we'll talk to you down the line, man.
All right, my friend. Have a great one. Talk to you Wednesday.
Geoff Mosher's back Wednesday. The Eagles are back, of course, as we saw them last night at Lincoln Financial Field. But we just gave you a great breakdown of some of the battles and things that are happening